That duck does not sound well. Like others before him, President Bush hopes to push through dozens of regulations, including anti-abortion proposals, including one that hopes to grant new protections to health care providers who oppose abortion on religious or moral grounds. The proposed rule would prohibit recipients of federal money from discriminating against doctors and other health care workers who refuse to perform or assist in the performance of abortion or sterilization procedures because of their, quote, religious beliefs or moral convictions. The Obama administration may be watching and keeping a list of new regulations that, well, let's just say aren't likely long for the world, but there are things the Bush administration is doing that the Obama administration will simply not be able to undo, like placing political appointees in career civil service posts. It's aptly called burrowing. Here's the deal. Half a dozen key deputies, including 2 former political appointees who have been involved in controversial environmental decisions, have been placed into senior civil service posts, creating security for these employees. It also will initially deprive the incoming Obama administration the chance to install their preferred appointees in some key jobs. Now, according to the Federal Office of Personnel Management, this transfer of political appointees into permanent federal positions, burrowing, has happened with 20 political appointees between March 1st and November 3rd. And how's the Bush administration handling the $700 billion bailout, about half of which has already been spent on something? Well, Treasury Secretary Paulson said today that they're not really sure what to do with the rest of the money. So he's going to let the Obama administration figure it out.
We have therefore determined that the prudent course at this time is to conserve the remaining funds available from the TARP, providing flexibility for this and the next administration.
So, in other words, President Bush's Treasury Department has punted to the Obama administration on the second down. Here to help us get our head around the daily beast that is political coverage is Tina Brown, co-founder and editor-in-chief of thedailybeast.com. Ms. Brown, thanks for being with us.
Good to be here.
Now, we want to get to the Bush administration's last days in just a second, but I want to begin with something from your site. The Daily Beast has a new poll on sexism, which we just completed. What finding in your poll surprised you the most?
Well, one of the things that surprised me was that actually only 20% of women even want to be considered feminists, and only 17% would want their daughters to be feminists. So I think at this point we can really honestly say that the ideas of feminism as such seems to be completely dead, which, you know, is really, you know, an amazing thing. But I think what we really also see that there has to be a new term for it, because what the poll does show is that there's an enormous amount right now of female anger at the end of this election. Women have a very bad taste in their mouth. I mean, you know, 68% of women are feeling that the media coverage was enormously unfair towards both Hillary and Sarah Palin, and they really want to see women better treated. So there's a lot of anger and a lot of desires for activism. They just don't want to call it feminism.
Now, how would you assess the Bush administration from the gender equity perspective?
Well, you know, I think that, you know, gender equity, you know, is not what I think of particularly when I think about the Bush administration, except, I mean, the fact is that they have continually interfered in the idea of women's reproductive rights. But aside from that, they've gone along and sort of made a giant mess of everything else they've touched. I mean, one of the things that you know, I'm told at the moment is that Bush is entirely focused right now on his legacy, on his library. That's all he really wants to talk about is his library, because he's trying to build a legacy. But, you know, quite honestly, one can only think that that library is almost like a kind of Halloween house of horrors. I mean, you know, from the Guantanamo room, you know, to the Abu Ghraib room, to the Hurricane Katrina room, you know, this is going to be a very interesting library when it's built.
Well, regarding the president's lame duckedness, for lack of a better term, how do you think he is different from past lame duck presidents?
Well, I think at this point, Bush has had so many disasters on his watch that I honestly get the sense that this is not a president who's kind of looking back in a mellow fashion on his presidency, or even feeling, you know, that he has busy things to do, so much as a president who is kind of punch drunk, really, with a series of debacles which even he, in his great sort of denial and his, you know, his refusal to really accept his own failures, has to accept at this point, has been a chapter of hideous accidents, if you want to be charitable about it. So I do feel right now that he's very stunned. I think that the financial collapse was one debacle, one disaster that he honestly didn't anticipate. Everything else has been stuff that he was actually sort of implemented. This one, you know, he really didn't expect this. And so he has to recognize he's going out in a cloud of disaster. And I think that's really almost paralyzing him. I feel he's fading. He's becoming the invisible man as we look at him.
Now, you're a well-known author, and there have been reports that book publishers don't seem particularly eager to publish President Bush's memoirs right away, but they're very interested in Laura Bush's memoirs. You've written biography, Princess Diana's most recently. Why do you think hers is causing more interest than his?
Well, you know, Laura has been a pretty fascinating character in the last 8 years because she's been like, you know, the Sphinx without a secret. I mean, you know, she has sat there smiling and smoking and reading and just simply not saying what she thinks. And I think all of us have projected on her feelings of enormous kind of frustration. I think she does feel frustration. What I'm told about the publishing meetings that she's happening is a real sense that Laura really wants to pop, that Laura is fed up with being silent, and she will have things to say. She's watched all of these disasters for the last 8 years, and she's really said nothing at all. So it's kind of intriguing what she might say at last.
It would be a good read. Tina Brown, co-founder and editor-in-chief of thedailybeast.com. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.
Pirates have hijacked a ship the size of an aircraft carrier off the coast of Somalia and are holding the crew for ransom. The booty? $100 million worth of oil.